What's up, beautiful people? My name is Derek, standing for one Happy Black History Month, and for this occasion, I have the high honor, the privilege, and the pleasure of interviewing somebody that I look up to dearly, Mr. Javonté Anyabwele, a member of Black on Black Rhymers, who I met him with. We reconnected again through the church, Sankofa Church in Atlanta. And ever since, man, I've been a fan of your work, a fan of your family's work, man, and it's an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for agreeing to do the interview, man. How you doing, good sir?
I'm doing all right, man. Thank you for having me. I've been seeing you do your thing with this, and what you do is not only novel, it's ingenious. And so I was happy when you asked. Let me on. Let me talk about whatever we gonna talk about.
Thank you for the praises. And man, for those of y'all watching, Javonté is one of those highly humble individuals, man. A great leader to deflect the praise. We can list a laundry list of accolades and high praises and awards this man has earned, but he deflects the praise to his wife and his family and his community, man. And that's a beautiful thing. We need good leadership back in our community. So thank you for that, King.
No problem, man. We were talking earlier. You called me out on it. I'm not that comfortable with compliments, so it's all good.
Good leaders usually aren't. Good leaders usually aren't, man. So yeah. So here on Solving Sundays, we juxtapose solving the Rubik's Cube to solving the twists and turns of life. And I was telling Javonté, he's a Renaissance man, a man of many hats, many talents. We can zone in on a lot of different areas, man. But I'm gonna let you take the freedom to highlight what's the goal? What do you do? Or what's the goal of what you're trying to do in your mission to serve mankind and womankind in this lifetime for you, good sir?
Oh, that's a great question. Like Miri Baraka would say, all talents and gifts I have, I wield and yield to my people. Like Garvey and Du Bois would say, I'm a race man. I was created to serve Black folks. So however people want to interpret that, everything that I can do, will do is definitely for African, people worldwide. And if we solve the problems that ail Black people in America, then we're going to solve the problems for America. And if we solve the problems for Black people in the world, then we're also going to be solving the problems for a lot of the people in the world outside of African folks. So that's really everything that I do. Everything that I desire to do is focused around that.
I think that's an amazing mission, amazing cause. I have this theory, man. It's amazing to see what Black people, what African descendants have been able to accomplish under the guise of oppression, under the guise of racism. It's amazing to see what we've been able to accomplish with this boot on our neck. Imagine if Black folks would never oppress the wonders of the world, man. It wouldn't be no I don't think it would be a cancer, global warming, none of this stuff, because we have this synchronicity with the earth and with the planet. It's a naturalness with us, and we understand the desire to be a we people and not a me people. I stole those words from John Henry Clark, but
Yeah.
our unity with the people, man. So yeah, thank you for that cause. Thank you for that cause. So the first step of solving the Rubik's Cube is to believe. So we got to believe. He's a race man. He's fighting for the people. Those of y'all who just saw the Judas and the Black Messiah, go see that movie. I think it opens up a lot of dialogue about the Black leaders in our community. And I realized they've been getting taken out, man. And that movie got me researched. I'm researching Fred Hampton. I didn't realize he was 21 years old when he transitioned as a martyr in the fight for liberation. And that right there shows you, man, we never too young to serve. We're never too young to serve. And we can always be and do. Even the babies can do that, man. So yeah. We appreciate your cause, good sir. Step number 2 of solving the Rubik's Cube. Step number 2 of solving life is to solve your cross. Solving your cross is to identify your why, your reasons. So you're in a fight on the front line for the liberation of Black folks, man. So why is this important?
First let me just take this tangent real quick. I've heard you do this poem, as you mentioned. We both, members Black on Black Rhyme. I've heard you do this poem before, but how you have this whole show set up, I mean, this is amazing. This is just really dope. I really like this. But my cross or the why, if you juxtapose the fact that we're not supposed to be oppressed. You mentioned something a bit earlier, like, hey, imagine if we weren't oppressed. Well, we don't even have to imagine too far. All we got to go is further than 400 years back. and I think people need to understand that African people have been on this planet for 250,000 years. Okay, so 250,000 years. The next group of people that made up a race were Asians, and they didn't show up until 60,000 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then you didn't have what we know of as Europeans till 40,000 years ago, right? So what I'm saying with that is that we've got such a head start in the history of mankind. And so you can look at that history and understand what we're supposed to be. And it has nothing to do with an idea or framework of supremacy. It just has to do with the idea of what can be our total contributions. We're not talking about potential. We're just talking about turning things back the way that they were. So the first thing is, we're not supposed to be oppressed. You asked me the why, like, well, that's the why. Secondly, I just never really have ever grown comfortable with the idea of debts being owed and not paying them. And so we're owed a tremendous amount of debt, and it needs to be paid, and it needs to be paid for everybody and for everyone to be able to move on, from atrocities and sins of the past. So, the other thing is that I'm not a believer in the idea of exceptionalism. That's a very only American idea, really. You see it in spurts, but this idea that, we can take data points or sample sizes of small ranges and look and diagnose a whole group of people based off of it, and taking it at the higher end of whatever the standard deviation is, right? That's an American idea, this idea of exceptionalism. And really, this Black folk fall into it because we like the feeling of being exceptional. I mean, you have personalities of people that like that. That's that's not an issue, but sometimes we settle with that, and oppressors will throw it back at us like, oh, look at Oprah, look at Obama, look at Michael Jordan. Like, what are you talking about? What do you mean you're oppressed? Well, obviously that there's more to that then. So my point is, I don't feel comfortable looking at myself as a success if my people are not a success. So back to that whole thought process, like, Brother John would say, Dr. John Warford would say, we for a reason, right? The reason why we are we. And so I don't look at myself and my success outside of my community. So that's really my why. If my community is struggling, if we're oppressed, then I'm oppressed. And if I'm oppressed, then I got to fight. That's just me.
It's several points you hit on, but John Henry Clark, if you study his work, man, he's a big believer in this concept of African people naturally in our core. We're not capitalist people. We are people. We understand. Our ancestors didn't sign their names on artwork because I can't take credit for this. I was able to produce this because of my influence, the influences surrounding me. So it was never let me claim my success, let me claim my talents and my wisdom. It's a part of the community. Another point, you said that in order to see how we're supposed to be living, all we got to do is go past 400 years, and we lock ourselves in this box of slavery. And we've been taught, African history started with slavery. I know, and I was so proud of my baby girl. She just recited a poem called Royal Root.
I saw that, man. That was amazing.
Yeah. I think all our kids, man, we need to highlight that our history did not start with slavery. We come from a people that invented thinking. We come from a people that, our contribution to the world is not even quantifiable. How impactful we've been across not just the United States, but all over this world. You take Black folks out, and you got to take a lot of things with you if you take Black folks out of the picture. So,
well, I was excited to have the talk, and you say you want to talk about Black History. It's Black History Month, so we should talk about the fact that the founder of Black History Month, and then all of his proteges who really institutionalized Black History Month, past where it was very clear in the objective. It was to celebrate the Negro in history. So not Negro history, and not the idea that history starts in a specific time frame, but it's simply to say you've learned all year round, number one. You've been studying for 11 months about Africans in history, in world history, because anywhere you look, the text has been sometimes written where we're taken out of it. But any movement of people, any achievement of people, it definitely had African people involved, and most of the time African people leading. And so he was very specific in saying, all you got to do, number one, is just so Black History Month, we're going to celebrate the Negro in history, but why are we're going to celebrate the study of the Negro in history? Why are we studying the Negro in history? Well, we're studying the Negro in history so you understand that all you got to do is look at history in the right context, and you see that we were there, and you don't feel like we were separated in some way. In fact, he wrote a book called The Negro in History. It's a book that he wrote. It's actually one of, I say this all the time. Carter G. Woodson is most known for creating Black History Month and Miseducation of Negro. Miseducation of Negro was like Michael Jackson's Bad album. Okay, so it was an incredible album, but nobody ever says Bad is Michael Jackson's best album. You know what I'm saying? And so Miseducation of Negro by far was not Carter G. Woodson's best book. It's like, if he was known for that, so my point to that is the Negro in history is more like Thriller. Okay, so if you look at that book, it's more like Thriller, off the wall. You know what I'm saying? Depending on what it is, it's more like Stevie Wonder's Song in the Key of Life. Nobody says Fulfilling This First Finale is Stevie's best album. It's an incredible album, but nobody is say, oh man, yeah, I know Stevie Wonder, Fulfilling This First Finale. That ain't what's gonna come out of your mouth. You know what I'm saying? So that and so my point to all of that is that Carter G. Woodson, his most famed work is not his best work. His best work was specifically about this subject, about the idea that you don't have to really focus on the negative or, hey, our history started in, 400 years ago or whenever. Just understand that you are part of a continuum that's much broader and much further along than where we are. And that's the Negro in history in all parts of it, and I'm off on a tangent a bit, but I'm thinking about that concept of what you just said of, explaining to the children. The other thing that Carter G. Woodson was very specific in was that, so just real quick on that, Carter G. Woodson had an association for study of Negro life or African life or something like that. You can look it up, the name of it, whatever it was. He created this institution that was literally for the study of history, and specifically Black history. And he started it, but later on, just you get a sense of how big and important this was. Like later on, Mary McLeod Bethune became the president of that association, and they had their conferences and everything at Bethune-Cookman and Daytona. Like it was a real big deal, right? And the thing about that was that the association was very prescriptive in ensuring that all of the materials were for teachers and for students. And it was for teachers of elementary students. And it was specifically to educate the children on who they were, so they understood what they could become. Okay, so that is why Black History Month was created. And he was very specific. And all of the publishers, like this went on well after Carter G. Woodson passed away in 1950, well after Mary McLeod Bethune passed away, around the same time. This association went well into the 70s, and all of the publishers of like the pamphlets, what they used to do is they would have these newsletters and pamphlets to educate the children throughout the year, and then at the end of the year, Black History Month was to be celebrated, and it was to be celebrated, at first as a week. But then they later said, well, we got Frederick Douglass' birthday, we got Lincoln's birthday. If one of them falls, if Douglas's birthday falls in 1 week and Lincoln's birthday falls in the other week, we're going to celebrate the week of Frederick Douglass. And then later on, they was like, you know what, we're going to celebrate both weeks. And then they were like, you know what, we're going to celebrate all month. That's how it came to that way. And then later on, the U.S. government said, okay, we're going to recognize it. That was like 1976. But anyway, the association created pamphlets and information for children. Why was that so important, right? That was so important to arm children with the idea of who they were before they had to fight with somebody about who they were, right? So one of my good friends, one of your good friends, Sonny Patterson, she's got a poem where she says, "We don't train warriors on the battlefield." Right? So you can't be equipped if you let me break it down a different way. So I don't know if you know the story of Claudette Colvin. You know Claudette Colvin. So Claudette Colvin was she's often mentioned as the first person who was protested having to move from a bus. Okay, so Claudette Colvin did this prior to Rosa Parks. In fact, Rosa Parks, you know, they sort of planned that. They were like, okay, Claudette Colvin, she wasn't the right person to do it. She was younger. She was a teenager, all of this stuff.
A pregnant teenage mother, correct? I think she went to Washington High School in Atlanta.
Well, she was what now?
I think she went to Washington High School in Atlanta.
Okay. Yeah. So, but you know, Claudette Colvin was, you know, she was on the bus, and there are stories about like she was dragged off the bus, kicking and screaming, all that. That's not true. She didn't do a lot of interviews because she, the new age word, especially in the year like we had of 2020, is performative. She was not performative, right? So she was not looking at it like, oh, I did this for a cause, for a reason. She did do it for principle, but it wasn't for a show, right? So she turned down a lot of interviews, but she did an interview in like the 80s, or maybe even later, where you know, she didn't do a lot of interviews, but in the interview she said, you know, people used to, you know, I used to laugh when people would tell the story back about, you know, when I refused to get off the bus, they would say, you know, I can't kick and scream. She said, I was just sitting there. I was sitting there. And the funny thing was she felt like the hand of Sojourner Truth and the hand of Harriet Tubman were holding her down. And she had just learned about both of them in her class. They were studying Black history, right? So she was equipped to understand her place in the world in the continuum because she knew her history. So she was equipped to be a warrior for us, right? And so when we talk about Black history and you talk about that cross and that why, and you talk about educating children, that was actually why Black history was invented. It was not invented for us to display our social standing in the world. What I mean by that, it was not about, oh, we about to be Black this month. No, in the contrary, you were supposed to be Black all year and celebrate what you learned about it, right? And it wasn't just, oh, you're supposed to be, you know more about your hair. No, you're supposed to know more about your history. So it's like, you know, you see these things with Black History Month, you know, oh, okay, we're gonna play spades more this month, or we're gonna be asked to go speak more, and then speak more to white folks about Black history in the month that we're supposed to be celebrating, because we learned all year. And so you create these environments where it's turned on its head, and it loses the sense of what it was really supposed to be about. And it's really supposed to be about you celebrating a rites of passage, basically. You celebrating learning about your history so then you can be equipped to understand all these things happened before you. So clearly, whatever you see in the future, you know, all these people sacrifice for you. So in the future, whatever the battle is, you know, we can also fight that. That was a little, you know, we circular people. So I went around the block with it, but
we need the history lessons. We need the history lessons. And two, like John Henry Clark, I'm a fan of his work, man. So that's why I keep referencing him. But he didn't speak about Black history or white history or women's history. He wanted an inclusive history where everybody's story was told, and honestly, all we gotta do is just tell the story how it happened. You know, we don't have to isolate history and highlight certain points based off race or based off gender or anything like that. We just tell the story how it happened, and that'll solve a lot of the issues right there. Inclusive history. We're supposed to be learning about, you know, everybody's proper place in history year round, and not distorting the story. And that's why it's very important that as Black people, you know, I know you heard the phrase, as long as the hunter tells the story, the light will continue to be villainized and the hunter will be glorified. So we need to have our own story. Inclusion, representation in our textbooks is so important. It's so valuable. I mean, you know, I was just talking about the doll test and how babies at a young age can understand. Oh, if you could put a Black child and they can say my race is inferior. As a kid, as a baby, they can say this stuff. You got to give them the knowledge. You got to include them in the history so they know, you know, we're not inferior. We're not inferior. You know, no matter what the doctrine says or what y'all try to brain feed us, it's not the case. So, I came up with the phrase African, not African. I got tired of my Black kids. I was a teacher for 2 years, and it was so sad how many Black kids would come into my classroom and tell me what they couldn't do. and it was only the black kids, and we were like, look, we got to change this narrative, man. I am African, and you know that's what Life is Like a Rubik's Cube started. We started teaching kids how to solve Rubik's cubes to be a confident. Yeah. Let me Okay, so we got Jakivia Lane. She's a heavy supporter. She's always dropping in. We appreciate your love and your support, good man. She's supporting. We got Mr. Keith Rogers, founder of Black on Black Rhyme. His birthday's coming up. We have another comment. Mr. Will, think we concentrate too much on past acts when we need to comprehend substance. The brand of black, Negro, colored, or any other brand name to me are distractions. They gave us Black history to keep regurgitating the past, to keep us looking back. They study our melanin because that speaks past, present, and future, in my opinion. Mr. Randall, thank you.
So I don't know. Am I supposed to respond to this?
You can.
So the premise is false that they gave us anything. The study of Black history, as we were mentioning, like, you know, it absolutely came from us. And it came from us for all of the reasons that we were saying, which were extremely important. It's important to know and to understand that foundation, because the idea that we have never had nor do have institutions that create these environments for us, and we will undoubtedly off of the wrong type of ideology say they gave us this, when that just simply is not the case. Like, this literally came from Black folks in Black institutions that were specifically to institutionalize the muscle memory of our past to help us in the future. Just like how repetitive you have to be when you're playing a sport to understand, to get better. Like, when you shoot layups in basketball, you're going to practice them layup drills nonstop. And it don't matter if you're professional. When you warm up, you're not going to warm up with jumpers. You're warming up with layups, and it's going to be the same thing every single time. When, however it is, when you are reciting something from memory, you're going to start with this much of it first, and then you expand on it. So the idea that we focus too much on history is blasphemous. Like, we can't focus enough on history, because history truly is our ability to tell the future. This is the gift that humans have. We can look back in the past and then predict the outcomes for the future. Animals can't do that. Their memories are shorter, right? What happens to them, over time, and when I say over time, I mean like evolution time, so thousands of years, then they understand, okay, well, that is predator, so I need to run. Okay, but do they understand that, damn, my man just got 8 last week, but I'm still in the same spot? Exactly. Or every fall they start shooting us from the trees. They don't get that, right? They don't understand that, but the animals don't understand that, but humans do. And it's because of our ability to understand our past to predict our future. So saying we focus too much on history means that we are trying to cut off our future. History is really time travel. We're looking back to understand where we're going. Everything that's ever happened to us, or everything that will happen to us, has already happened to us. So we need to understand in that context, and it's clear that we don't study it enough, so we got to study it more, not less.
I think that this whole principle of Sankofa, going back to move forward, we really gotta know and understand. Like you said, you hit it perfectly on the head, man. History is time travel. We can literally go back and see how to navigate this thing called life, and see how to position ourselves in the best positions. One, the Sankofa principle. Two, I highly encourage everybody. I've been mentioning his name a lot, but I highly encourage everybody who's watching to go and look up John Henry Clark's definition of history. He tells you that history is a people's clock. It tells us where we are, what we are, and who we are in our place and time, but it tells us where we're going. I had this quote up in my classroom hanging on the back wall, because we got to understand our proper place. That if we know our history, we'll know the value of Africa. I grew up. I'm sad to say this, but I grew up with this disdain towards Africa. I didn't want to claim. I didn't want to be claimed with the land. I thought Africa was full of savages and disease ridden. I grew up with these, because that's what I was indoctrinated with growing up as a young person. And it wasn't until I got to FAMU. And when I tell you the beauty of HBCUs, we talk about Black history, but the beauty of studying history at an HBCU and how it opened up my eyes and my confidence level shot through the roof. Y'all, it's something beautiful when a young Black child knows, Ayana, Derek, my children, your children, they know what this is. They already know. Ayana was on the playground one day. I want to share this story, but she was on the playground and it made me so proud as her dad. She said, for some reason, they got brought up the conversation of the race of God, what color God was. So it was a white child on the playground, and she said God was white. Ayana, she said God black, and God is black just like me too. I was like, that right there. I get reprimanded. I get chewed out a lot for telling my daughter that there's a God and there's a goddess, and they both look like her. But I believe in inclusion. I want my daughter to know, you can be deity too. I want my kids to know, my son to know, this what God look just like you. And that does a different level. That does something to the confidence, man. But we kind of know, but the people who's watching, we got some more comments coming in. We got some more comments. We got the greatest, Mr. Ali. Hey, what's up, y'all?
What's up?
Mr. Ratliff, we do. I concur. His story. We need the truth of our story. Wholeheartedly agree. We definitely need honest history and put it to its proper place. Putting our history inaccurately is like pouring clean water in a dirty glass. So we definitely need to get that situated. So the third step of solving the Rubik's Cube, the third step of solving life is to fill in the corners. Filling in the corners is to surround yourself with people who will push you and motivate you to be the best version of yourself. And it's to immerse yourself in a positive environment. So what kind of environment do you surround yourself in that fuels the mission, that fuels your cause in this fight for African folk liberation?
So everywhere that I've gone, I've tried to be a part of a community that it was already in existence of Black folk, and then if not, try to create that community because we need our sacred spaces. And so I try to fill myself up with sacred spaces, right? I've lived in a lot of places. I've lived all over the United States. I've lived in the Netherlands. I've lived in Singapore, and we're everywhere. And so, have oftentimes had to work really hard to ensure that we have our safe and sacred spaces. And so what I always try to fill myself up with is just, Black folks in the room, and in a shared culture. And it's important to pass on that culture. So before I even had children, I wanted to be a curator of our culture because it's so rich and I grew up in it, number one. And I know that all that I am is because of that, right? So I definitely had all the battles. I could be scripted out of a Hollywood cast for, a ghetto boy done good. You know what I'm saying? So, the euphemized way of saying I came from humble beginnings.
Yes, sir.
But with that said, even in those spaces, in my humble beginnings, it was filled with so much about how great we were, right? And so I want to ensure that as I transition from youth to then adult and then eventually elder, that I'm a part of that continuum, right? It's very much an African philosophy. You talk about John Henry Clark, he talks about that clock and he talks about, we all come from the earth, from the dirt or underneath, right? That water. And so when you were born, you live your time on top, and then when you become an ancestor, you return back into that dirt. And so in my time here, I want to make sure, like, okay, I have this understanding, this meaning. So I'm doing all I can in my place in that time to be a part of that. So what does that look like? Strong community looks like gathering spaces, number one, where you can share, you can teach, you can learn culture. It looks like church. It looks like, theater. It looks like the arts. It looks like places to to eat. You know, it looks like all of those things where what makes up community. And so, you know, we did that. My wife and I, we did that even in Singapore. You know, I'm proud of the work that she did. They still have, before we went to Singapore, this was I started working there a lot in 2012. We didn't move until 2013. But I was like, man, even when I was in Europe, in like, you know, places extremely white, like I was able to find a barber easy. I was able to find this, that, and third. I couldn't do it in Singapore. Not till my feet were on the ground. I was like, okay, there are black folks here, but you know, there was a bit disjointed. She started a group called Sisters in Singapore. It's still going on today, where black women, because first of all, black women are the real creators and cultivators of culture, right? So you ask, what do? I ensure that my woman, for sure, and other women can really stand in the space that they need to do most of the creation, right? So, but that becomes so important as well, where, you know, that group is still going on, and it creates a sense of community, and people can identify and see themselves, even when they're strangers in a foreign land, you know, and that becomes, you know, that becomes key.
Man, I think it's amazing. One, to connect with people who look like us. A lot of times, you know, we've been taught to, you know, fear, like, you know, don't talk to strangers and stuff like that. But, you know, when you're a stranger in a foreign land, I think it's very important that you seek out people who look like you, just to have that sense of community.
You know, the interesting thing is, you know, I don't know if I was ever born with that fear or not, but you know, I grew up in Minneapolis, you know, Minnesota, where when I grew up, it was less of a black population than it is now. And so, you know, there were folks who would speak more than just saying hello. Then it'd be like, okay, do you know them or whatever? We had that. That's a very like northern urban type of thing. Like, okay, why are you trying to speak to me? But my grandma, my mom, everybody was like, you see a black person, you speak to them no matter what. So they know that this is just off top. You got to be able to say, hey, how you doing? You know, basically, I see you. You're not invisible to me. Is really the language that you're exchanging. I bring that up to say, ain't no way in the world. I don't care where it is, right? And South Florida got this issue because of the imperialism of, like, you know, the British, the history of the British and the colonization of the imperial British, you know, empire, where all of the Caribbeans, you know, they don't like to speak to folks. You know, and I don't care. You're gonna speak to me, right? You're gonna have to be like very, very obstinate in not speaking to me, right? So, you know, whether it's down here in South Florida, I'm like, hey, you know, this type of thing. Or when we were in Asia, you know, we see people cross the street, we waving them down like, no, where are you from? You know, and then you end up with a community where you get outside of the ideas of these constructs that were put on us by borders. Then you'd be like, oh no, it's Pan-African, right? So, okay, you from the UK with Caribbean roots, and okay, you from Nigeria, you know, I'm from, you know, the States. And then you can exchange those subcultures within the cultures, but then you find a thread that binds you all. And now I got like a super pack of friends from all over the world. And again, this isn't limited to black folks, right? I want to share this one story where when we're talking about history, we were in Asia. We were at a bar and we just started talking to this other couple, this Indian couple. And after a bunch of drinks, conversation just eventually evolved into like the ideas of oppression, colonization, race, all this stuff with this Indian couple. And this lady was talking about, you know, the States were so racist. She went to school. I think she went to Boston. She may have went to Harvard or something like that. But she was in college getting her, not even her undergrad, she was getting a graduate degree. So she was already learning and she was already accomplished. And she grew up in India, and you know, she knew what her culture was and who she was within her culture. And she remembers a time where she was on a bus and everybody just, you know, first they was calling her like these racial epithets, but she wasn't even like Mexican or Islamic or whatever they were calling her. So she was like, what are y'all talking about? And then, you know, they were, whatever they said to her or they did something, and she was just like, this is so stupid. Like, it was, you know, almost funny to her, like, because clearly that's not me. Like, I know who I am, right? So, but it can be much more piercing when you have no clue of who you are because you didn't grow up in your culture. You just grew up around your culture. We grew up hearing stories about your culture. So, you know, the fact that you use language where you say you're telling these young black kids that they're African, that immediately ties them to something greater than 400 years ago, right? So, you know, and this Indian woman was just like, this is not even on my journey in life. Like I'm not paying her no attention. And she went on with her life, and now she a boss or whatever she was doing. But again, that's just an idea of we have to get more to that, and we don't get there without really cultivating, understanding our culture.
It's highly valuable that we need to know who we are, and where we come from. We got to make that association. It's so many different resources that we can recommend. I want to recommend another resource, Michael Bradley's Iceman Inheritance. It's a great book to talk about people of the sun, people of the ice, people of the sand, and just the mindset of capitalism and oppression, and how it's very valuable for we claim ourselves, like reclaim ourselves. We talk about not knowing who we are. It's so sad that melanated people, African descendant people, man, we can despise who we are. We can hate on what makes us us. And, we've been indoctrinated to hate what makes us great. And we gotta claim it, man. Once we know our superpower, then the world is ours for the taking. So yeah, man, thank you for that. We gotta make definitely. Well, Tony Patterson said we don't raise the warriors on the field. We raise them in the classroom. So definitely make sure they know who we are. Yeah. The fourth step of solving the Rubik's Cube. I wanted to mention this too, man. I wanted to highlight, man, because you're an amazing family man, Dr. Denard. He has this quote. I love the quote. He says that the most revolutionary thing Black folks can do is get married, have babies, and stay together. And it's a beautiful thing to see you following on that path and on that journey. And your babies are some geniuses. I mean, true geniuses. And I say this about Ayanna and Derek all the time. People, everybody want their kids to be smart, but man, all melanated kids can do this. It's so beautiful that you get some kids, man. Derek 4, he play chess. I can claim, okay, I want to claim that he's smart, but that's that exceptionalism that we're talking about in America. In my mind, man, all these kids can do this. All these kids can do this, man. We put them in the right environment. If they know who they are, there's no limits on what they can do. So I just wanted to highlight, man, that the work that you and your wife are doing, now the work that you and your seeds are doing, y'all got authors already. They ain't even teenagers yet.
I got to interrupt, and this is not me just trying to deflect. This is really me putting it where it's due. I'm responsible for two things. You know what I mean? I gave them. They come from livestock. You know what I mean? They got some good genes on my side and her side, but that cultivation is all her. I mean, it's literally what she does, and I'd be remiss not to mention that she's the one that does it, and does it not just for our kids but for others. Rise Anyabwele Academy, right? So that's she has virtual training, virtual school, Afrocentric school, and a curriculum that pulls out and cultivates the genius of all of those kids, right? So that's extremely all her doing.
And definitely a big fan of her work. If y'all need any, I bought the why can I think of the name of it? It's on the tip of my tongue. The Kwanzaa candles. Why can't I think of the name of it right now? The Kwanzaa Sisters for Rise Academy. Ashley's daughter. I think she's a part of the online school community that your wife is hosting. Ashley Lewis. Yeah. She's a lawyer in Atlanta doing amazing things as well. But so I played your daughter doing algebra. Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I'm proud of both of them. Ayanna's just a different kind of beast, man. So I just want to show what our kids, what our babies are capable of. So the fourth step of solving the Rubik's Cube, the fourth step of solving life is to take it to the next level. Taking it to the next level on the cube is solving the second row. In life, it's to acquire new knowledge and new skills. It's continue to grow. It's to continue to get better. So on this mission that you're on, how do you develop yourself? How do you sharpen your skills and sharpen your weapons, man?
Read.
The old classic go-to. Picking up a book.
Like with books too, like not just audio books, but there's read. Reading is so important because there's so much more information, and we like to do a lot. Like we get like TikTok with all of our information because there's so much information available. I saw this thing. I was talking to somebody the other day. I was talking to my trainer, and I was telling him, like, this movie that was on Netflix called like The Social Dilemma or something like that.
Social media.
And
Oh
yeah, and they were talking about, like it's this matrix of social media, which I agree with, and all of us are susceptible to it. But you're a lot more susceptible if you don't read books and understand like when stuff just don't make sense. And it's much easier to understand when something's not making sense when you've been under that practices of understanding how things are supposed to go. It's just like the food you eat. Like, they say, what's the best way to, for focus on your diet is definitely like, okay, cook. Cook the food that you eat, and then you understand more about where it comes from, and then you gotta understand more about like the better choices, like not prepackaged stuff, but like from scratch. And that's what reading is. It's like, you sharpen the skills that way. That's number one. Number two, I would say past that is seeking wise counsel and showing I think the worst thing that anybody can do is believe that they have all the answers to anything and then can't improve on it. And even when you think your ideas are good, who can you run that by? That's not just going to tell you, oh yeah, but really somebody who is where you were or somebody who is where you are trying to go. And so that is extremely important as well. But those are the two things that I would say that I do for
man,
sure.
the books is a amazing concept. I'm a college, as a college graduate, I think it's very, they just
Yeah.
there. These are the works I'm working on right now. So and there's another bookshelf behind me, and another bookshelf in the room. One the exposure. I want to make sure Ayana and Derek they see a lot of books and see their value. Y'all need to be picking up books and reading information.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a plethora of ways that you can acquire information, but reading a book, it does something more than just reading the book. You get, like you said, the way you think about things, the way you can analyze situations, the way you can,
and the way you can communicate your thoughts because you spend time understanding. It's the same thing with language. Like you learn language from hearing it, and then when you're reading, you're learning that language of like, okay, let me construct and process my thoughts in a way that makes sense. You become a better writer when you read more.
Yes, sir.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And the sad reality, I want everybody to take heed to this. The sad reality of something, is a lot of people got more TVs in their house than they got books. That's a sad reality. A lot of people got more TVs in their homes.
Hey, man, I'm thinking you can only have like 4 or 5 TVs in your house. You can't get more books than that.
Exactly. Tallahassee, we've been blessed and fortunate and highly favored. There's a Goodwill bookstore, hardbacks. You can get hardbacks for $3. I mean, that's my favorite spot. That's where I'm at. That's where I'm going. That's where I'm at. So, books. Definitely. Thank you for taking that on. Now, the fifth and the final step of solving the Rubik's Cube, the fifth and the final step of solving life, is to see the bigger picture. Now, seeing the bigger picture simply means to keep your commitment to your commitments. I personally know firsthand that the battle that you are fighting it won't be one that you're gonna quit on. I'm a big believer. I'm a big fan of the fact. I'm so proud of the fact that I had the opportunity to meet Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. She was an octogenarian. She was in her 80s, 70s, late 70s, fighting for the liberation of Black folks. And she took this mission to the grave, man. I think that's a beautiful thing when people are taking their work to the grave. They're gonna fight to their last breath. So keeping your commitment to your commitments. How you plan on doing it? How you gonna stay the course? We're gonna have obstacles that throw you off track. Obviously, you haven't been a victim of your success. Your success hasn't caused you to lose focus. And I pay attention to this. I'm like, Javonté is at a place in life where he can claim the exceptionalism and claim I've made it. I'm here. I'm at a point where I've made it. I'm good. My mama proud of me. I can leave a legacy onto my kids, but it ain't over yet because my community ain't free yet. So, how do you stay committed to that mission?
You just said it. I mean, I've written it in poems and everything else. Who am I if we are straight? We meaning myself, my wife, but our people have not prevailed, right? So who am I? What does that make me? Not much. There's really nothing. I don't want to be at the top of the mountain by myself, or even am I climbing the right mountain? Those are things you have to reflect on. But what I take it back to is, my grandmother my maternal grandmother was valedictorian of the high school I went to. My mom went to, my siblings went to, my aunts went to, like, you know, family high school. And she was valedictorian at a time when the school was all Jewish. You know, super, you know, smart woman, and it was at a time when, you know, the school in the state of Minnesota, if you put on a college application, you went to this high school, Minneapolis North Community High School, you were automatically granted acceptance into school. And, you know, it was that. So she was the best of the best. Okay. And because of race, she wanted to go to a specific college in Minnesota, was turned down because of race. Other hardship, you know, my grandma was a drug dealer, amongst other things, right? And it was because of things that got in the way, right? And so I was born into poverty. And, you know, I saw an article a couple years ago about what it takes to pull yourself out of poverty. You almost got a picture perfect game. And that really stunk. Like, man, you know, you don't look at it that way. You're just taking one step and you're just trying to make the right moves and continue to move forward that way. But it's so real. So when you can feel quite successful and accomplished, even if you just change the outcomes you may have been born into. But just because you did it and you are great, and they don't take anything away from it, but, you know, every manufacturing process is set up where there will be some defect. And the ones of us who do succeed, we're defects in this manufacturing process. Okay. So what I mean by that is, you know, we're not supposed to be successful. We are oppressed. We are not supposed to be successful. But no matter how much you can, you know, they have these terminologies in operations excellence in manufacturing where this concept of 6 Sigma, which means that you are only getting 3.5 defective parts per million. So 3.5 defective parts per million is considered reaching 6 Sigma, which is like a zenith point, which is like almost perfect, right? So the system is set up where it's almost perfect, and we get a couple defects pop out that we're able to avoid it and do something different. The system's problem is still there. We don't want this system. We don't want this system, right? And so we want to be able to put it in, just like, you know, the idea of an American dream, or for anyone, where you put it in the system and everybody is coming out right, you know. So yeah, broken spokes in the wheel. I see that popped up. Absolutely. So you know, the idea is, you know, if the system still exists in the way that it does, and most of us are coming out the right way according to the system, means it's extremely hard for us to be successful. You know, I just look around. You know, I got a cousin, brilliant mind. I got a couple cousins like that, and the only thing that really kept us on different tracks was opportunities provided to me, but then also like decisions. But, you know, as a human being, you're not supposed to be like your life is over because you made one bad decision, right? And so, I mean, it doesn't happen like that for the majority of folks. You know, it happens like that for us in majority numbers, but that's not how it's supposed to work, you know. And so you ask, like, what keeps me focused on that? Well, that's the thing that we live with, you know, every single day. So it's pretty easy for me to focus on it. I ain't getting lost in that sauce.
Yes, sir. And it's so crazy, man. It's hard to want to be successful, but understand that if I'm successful, I'm a defect. I'm a defect. I'm not supposed to be here. It's almost, I don't know. It's the exception.
I like to tell this story, man. Another time, I don't know if you ever seen the Marina Bay Sands in Singapore, but it's this building. It's 3 buildings. On top of it's like a cruise ship. So you may have seen this image of this cruise ship that sits on top of these buildings, right? This is a Singapore monument. Well, it's the Sands, you know, casino, So they have a hotel and they got a casino at the top of it. On that cruise ship, there's a restaurant up there. So you know, a lot of what they call expats or foreigners go to this restaurant at the top. And it's beautiful. You can see the whole city. It's a beautiful view. I mean, you really feel like you're on top of the world when you're up there. And you know, you talk to people very open. They like, well, if you here, you somebody I should be talking to. So it's very much people want to talk, you know. So I'm talking to this white dude. We were roughly the same age, early 30s at the time. Now I'm I'll be 40 this year, but we, you know, it was early 30s at the time. And we, you know, we both live in this expat life, which in itself is a huge accomplishment. Because you know, you don't get and that's the thing, like, even just a tangent real quick, folks that come here that migrate people be like, oh, you know, we see Nigerians, they kill it. They most successful group of immigrants here. Yeah, because you usually get dynamic people that move to different countries. You know, you understand what I'm saying? So when you're a super dynamic person if you live in a different country. Full stop. Don't matter how you got there. It don't matter if you came over like on a raft or if you came over because, you know, college wanted you or whatever. Like you're pretty dynamic if someone thought so much of you, they invited you into their other sovereign state, right? So, you know, that's sort of the premise or basis of where we were. And I'm talking to this white dude and he's super cool. We talking and we actually, you know, probably would have been the best of friends if he ain't grow up how he grew up, I grew up how I grew up. What I meant by that was, you know, we super cool, have a good conversation. He was like, you know, especially white folks, they start drinking more, they get very handsy and touchy and almost like super emotional right off the bat, no matter who you are. He's like, yo, bro, I mean, it's like we're identical, you know, we're same type of situation. And he was right. We, for the most part, we did very much have similar type of interests. We were into the same type of things, same type of music. I mean, he was telling me about his favorite Du Bois book. You know what I mean? Like I was, you know, it was pretty wild. So we were, you know, yeah, it was all good. And he was like, yeah, it's like, you know, we're the same. And I was like, hold up, we're not the same though. He was like, what do you mean? I'm like, okay, remind me again. You went to Wharton, right? And he was like, yeah. I was like, and you say your dad went to Wharton? He's like, yeah, and my granddad. I said, okay. I said, well, my grandpa was a drug dealer. And we at the same place. So your granddaddy went to Wharton. Your hill to climb was much shorter than mine. We're not the same, bro. Like we, you know, this is it. And I'm bringing this up because that is, when you talk about equality, equality means like, oh yeah, we both just go and we get to know. Equity is a different conversation. Was there equitable contribution by both of us to get to the place that we were? Absolutely not. I had to do way more. And that's the problem. That's the defect. Right? So when you look at like a Mark Zuckerberg and you're like, wow, he created this amazing thing. This man is a genius, right? But then when I look at like a Jay-Z, I'm like, he has 1 billion. Mark Zuckerberg got like 100 billion. Okay, now who do I think is more incredible? Well, like he said, the first out the projects to get a Billy, the guy who had to do way more to get that, right? I mean, that's the type of thing that I'm talking about. So when we talk about this exceptionalism thing, it is exceptional, but it's not right. That's the point we're making, right? So you look at an Oprah, you look at a Bill Gates. Like, ain't no way in the world you can wrap your mind around to think that Bill Gates is more of a genius than Oprah Winfrey. Born in Mississippi, raped at an early age, you know what I'm saying, continuously, all types of things. Went through and became who she is, who she was and who she is now. You know, those types of things. That's what I'm talking about. Like, we do these things. And, you know, this level of exceptionalism shouldn't be a pat on the back. It should be like, bruh, this is not right. this isn't right. So that's what fuels me.
Yeah, you got all these obstacles on your back, all these just by birth. You born into a certain situation where you got a lot of obstacles, you got fences to climb, and you know you rise to the same level as somebody who went to Wharton, and he think y'all on the same path, but you don't know, man. You know you took the elevator to success. You know, I had to build my stairs. I had to make stairs. I didn't even have the stairs though. I had to make stairs for me to get there. So you know, those differences. And you know, I think it's very important for Black people, melanated people, and non-melanated people to have these open conversations because you know he could have walked away ignorant. You know, we're the same. We got the same type of ordeal, same type of lifestyle, but not knowing that you know you had a legacy already laid out for you. It was almost like you were written for this. Your grandparents went to Wharton. Your granddaddy went to Wharton. You got to follow the path. There's no other choice. Now, for
Right.
you to be in the same predicament as you, like you said, man, you had to pitch a perfect game, man. You had to do things that make people say wow, but it shouldn't be no a wow factor. You know, it's just a normal thing. When you know, a normal situation. So yeah. Thank you
You
for
know what
sharing this.
normalizes it? I mean, I know we running. You run this for like an hour, right? So I know we run out of time. But you know what normalizes it is me. What I mean by normalizing it, why I don't buy into this belief or feel the weight of exceptionalism, is because I know my history, and I look back, and then you talk about a John Henry Clark, the life that he had to live, and he studied a lot of Carter G. Woodson. But you look at Carter G. Woodson, you know, he also wrote a book, his recollection of the Civil War. So he was born 10 years after the Civil War was over. But his father was a veteran in the Union Army, and so were his uncles. And so they used to tell him stories. His family went to West Virginia because of coal mines, and they were working in the coal mines. So he would have to go work in coal mines. When he come out of the coal mines, he would then go home and he would read to his family. And he would be educating them that way. And he saw lights turn on when he would educate them because he could read, and then taught them how to read, like how much more would illuminate from them. This is the man who later became the second African to ever receive a PhD from Harvard. And he was the only African to ever receive a PhD from Harvard who was born to enslaved parents. Okay, so he accomplished all this stuff, but he was literally in a coal mine. You know what I'm saying? He was under the ground. He was underground. When people say he got it from the mud, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he literally got it from the mud. You understand what I'm saying? So these are the shoulders of giants that we stand on. So do I feel like, oh, I've accomplished and done all of these things? Not really, when I know everything that's happened before. Now, am I trying to do my part? Absolutely. But it changes the paradigm and view of it. When, are we running a race that we can? Am I doing all that I can? Knowing that, just generations before me, the things that folks were doing, like you mentioned, when they were 21, be it Fred Hampton, or be it SNCC, or be it Freedom Riders, or whoever it was who were putting it all on the line so we could do what we want to do, right? So that's what is really keeps me focused and not too far off to start believing in my own hype.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We standing on the shoulders of giants, and we got to keep moving this. Our ancestors passed us the torch, and we got to carry the torch to keep that flame burning bright, man. It's our duty. It's our obligation to keep that flame burning as bright as it possibly can, because we got to illuminate. We got to illuminate a lot of minds out of darkness. Just imagine. If we could teach folks to critically think, to have a love for learning, a love for reading, to pick up a book, just read, just see where your mind can go. Man, man, Javonté, man, it's been a pleasure interviewing you, good sir. We have officially solved the Rubik's Cube, the twists and turns of the life, man. But it's
that's so dope that you do that.
I'm gonna humbly receive the praise, man. I'm
gonna try to go figure it out too. I remember you say first you go know your why. Do you make that cross? Do you paint them corners? Do you go to the next level? I'm about to try. I'm about to see if I got it.
Hey, that's it. And man, people be asking me about how to solve it. They be asking me about algorithms. I'm gonna just be honest with you. I have no clue what an algorithm is. I have no idea what it is. I know how to match the colors.
Lay one out. You just lay
I know
one
how to match the colors. You see, I know how to put the colors together. That's all I know how to do. And the purpose of us doing these interviews, one, we want our people to know that solving the twists and turns of life, man, is not algorithms. It's solving colors. For our people, it might be algorithms, but we got the capabilities of solving these algorithms. But and we want to simplify that and use it to put these colors together. So, man, but while we got a person of your stature, man, we got a person of your wisdom. I'm a big believer in taking advantage of you ain't an elder yet, Javonté, man, but you older than me, so you're an elder. So and when you got wise people, man, you got to sit down, cross your feet Indian style, man, and take on the lessons. So while we got you, can we get any last words that you want to leave us embarking? Ali said, I'll take the stickers off.
Any words to leave you with is definitely, while we're in Black History Month, we need to reclaim what have been created and foundations and institutions for us. We need to spend time with elders, and we need to spend time in those institutions, be it libraries. If you're in a town with an HBCU, then absolutely go to the HBCU, find out the library that's there, understand those histories, understand and look what you can learn if it's a church, whether you go to church or not, especially if you're in a place where there has an older church from the 19th century, 18th century is a Black institution. You know how much power are in these structures where our institutions, if they've been around for that long, and we can't see, so many things stay open for that long, and you got to go figure out and understand what's really there and understand those histories there. And then, really understand that Black history is different than, the Black cultural renaissance, right? What I mean by that is the celebration of Black history means that you are literally learning something about Black folk in history, not the fact that, oh, I'm blackety black, I'm Black CB4 Black, or I'm whatever. I see every Black history, but somebody do a new dance and they're like, oh, it's super Black. Okay, but what does that mean, right? Where's the substance behind it? We got to understand what that is more. So don't leave history out of it, whether it's your thing or not. Try to figure out these points in times, especially that we understand that history. You want to celebrate our culture, that's a different time. That's Kwanzaa, that's Juneteenth, that's 4th of July, that's Labor Day, Memorial Day. You know what I'm saying? Like those are those times where we really get down, but we need to study our history specifically.
Hey, man, I concur wholeheartedly. I couldn't say it better myself. Before you do anything, before you do any project, you got to know the foundation of, if you want to be a basketball player, you got to know the history of the NBA. You got to know the history of Michael Jordan and the people that done came before you. If you want to be an architect, you need to know people who done built buildings and how this thing started. So it makes no sense. I think the most important thing that we should be knowing is ourselves. Before we study anything, we need to be studying ourselves and making a mission to know who we are. And with that being said, you got to know where you come from. You got to know who you are and whose you are. We got to know these things. These things are so critical to our surviving in the 21st century and beyond. Javonté, man, from the top of my heart to the bottom of my soul, thank you for agreeing to do the interview. For everybody who's been engaging, Ali, Mr. Ratliff, Miss Lane, Keith, thank y'all for tuning in, watching, taking on the nuggets. For everybody else, I highly encourage y'all to follow this man and his work. Follow this man's wife and the work that they're doing. I'm a first-hand experience of knowing that everything he's saying is genuine, truly genuine. They're community-oriented people. They take on their role. They take their role in the community very seriously. When we moved back to Atlanta, I came to Sankofa Church because you was there. I was like, okay, cool. Javonté at Sankofa Church. Let me go to Sankofa. And ever since then, the church has, truly taken us on, adopted us, made us a part of the family. And even you and your wife, when my mom passed away, y'all took Ayana in. Y'all took Ayana in. It was like, well, look, we'll take her right quick, and y'all get yourself together and get situated. Even when my son was born, y'all took it in, man. So grateful for all the many blessings that y'all have bestowed upon us and the community. And keep doing your work, King. Keep doing your work. If you can stay on for a hot second, it'll be a beautiful situation. For those of y'all who are watching, y'all be great like the lakes, be blessed like a sneeze. And hopefully y'all have some wisdoms that y'all are able to pick up and take away after watching this interview with this man of many talents, man, a beast right here. We're getting the opportunity to share with. So yeah. Y'all be great. I see y'all next Sunday. And Javonté, stay on for me if you can, King.
All right.